Hello and welcome to Conversations with Ex-Catholics. I am very honored to be joined today by Scott Grunow. Scott, how are you doing today?
Fine. Enjoying my summer vacation.
Good, good. Now, how did I do on the name pronunciation right there?
Perfect, because I've made a point. It's never pronounced correctly. And I will make a point. My boss of 20 years still does not pronounce it correctly. He keeps saying Grunow. It's Grunow. That's it. Rhymes with Bruno.
Oh, that's a good way to remember it. Bruno
Yes.
Grunow. Perfect. Well,
Yes.
Scott, I'm very excited to have you on the show today. It's not often that I have an opportunity to talk to somebody like you who has the perspective that you do and who grew up in the kind of family that you did. That's a little bit of foreshadowing. But before we go anywhere else, I'd be interested to learn a little bit about you. Now, I did say conversations with ex-Catholics, but I don't mean to presume. Would you ever start me off with, so you were born into a fairly Catholic family, I assume?
Yes, and it wasn't like super traditional. I mean, it was pretty like par for the core, like Vatican II. All right. Um, my parents were always involved in the church. My dad was a lector, a commentator, lay minister. My mother was in like the Saint Monica Guild. Okay. And she would taught CCD to the first grade. Okay. Um, I was an altar boy. We did not go to Catholic schools. Actually, I'm the one who's had the least Catholic school education. Grades 1 through 5 were public. And then we went to a public school for like a couple months, and my parents decided that would be better off in a Catholic school. So I spent like grade 6 through 8 in a Catholic school, and then I went to a public high school, and then I was switched to a Catholic high school. So I've had both, worlds, to say so. I think the assumption is we get a better education at the Catholic school. I beg to differ, because I thought the Catholic school is very deficient in terms of arts and humanities programs, which was my interest.
Wow.
Like coming from a public school where we had choir, orchestra, cello lessons, and then we go to the Catholic school, and Mrs. Kasuba comes in once a month to teach us to sing "Let There Be Peace on Earth." Okay.
I mean, your experience matches mine. I had many more. So I went to Catholic school for 1st through 8th grade, and then I went to a public high school. And the only reason I actually went to a public high school was because my parents knew about the opportunities that were present at public school that just weren't there at my little Catholic school. Now, my little Catholic school was really little because it was FSSP, so it was a trad Catholic school.
Yeah.
But I think the same, different scale maybe, but it still applies. So I totally get where you're coming from. But it sounds like you grew up in a pretty orthodoxly Catholic family, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we had the sacraments, First Communion, Confirmation. I mean, it was, and we went to Mass, I mean, one of my first memories of Mass is Good Friday, and the priests are lying on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, remember, like, when is this going to end? And actually, when we moved to a distant suburb, we didn't even have a church. It was in the high school auditorium, because they were trying to raise the money to build a church.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I remember a lot of my memories going to Mass it was a high school auditorium. My grandmother was the sacristan at her church. Okay, so that was a big deal, because she got to iron, surplices and linens, and then I could go back there and help her. And she'd give us those little wafers, unconsecrated, as snacks. So we would play church. Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal, because I could go back there and I'd help. I mean, it was a big deal. Okay.
That's really funny.
That she's like, yeah. So we played church, and I think the other influence that I will say, and I'm on Twitter, I'm kind of this old Hollywood person, is the influence of religious movies, like the Ten Commandments, the Song of Bernadette, King of Kings. I think just kind of moved into our, like, we would play the Ten Commandments, we would play the Song of Bernadette. I'm going to say something catty. I'm kind of going off, but do you remember when Bishop Barron was inveighing against the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence and okay.
At the baseball stadium, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I
And,
do.
you know, and I said, I admit I've been active in the LGBTQ community for years. Okay. It's just like many people who grow up in the suburbs. We moved to the city to have sex. We moved to the city to be ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In some ways, I would consider moving from one quote ghetto to another ghetto, but that's a whole other issue. Because I mean, I grew up pretty much, I didn't know anybody who was not Catholic. Okay. I mean, other than some of my mother's relatives who were Protestant, but everyone was Catholic. Everyone had 5 to 6 kids. My grandmother's block, I mean, what we lived a lot with my grandma was the same thing. The whole block was Catholic. So the point is, okay, so he was inveighing against the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. And I'm just going to be catty here. People can react, whatever. But it's interesting that he would be so against, quote, the drag persona, when my brother Stephen spent a lot of his childhood in drag playing the women's parts when we played everything, okay? So, for example, when we played the Ten Commandments, he was always the ingenue, like Nefertiti, okay? I find this very interesting. I was always the sidekick. I was never the main female lead, okay? So I just find this very interesting. He was always like, one time he put on my mother's foaming coat, high heels. I'm just saying, rang the doorbell and scared. I find this very interesting. I'm just throwing that out there.
My audience finds it interesting as well. I find it very interesting.
I'll tell you this. Like one time, this is when salespeople would call the house. I was born in '62, so I remember like the rotary phone on the kitchen wall. Okay, that you.
Yeah.
And so we get sales calls. And I think this is like my mother was starting to work part-time. So we got a sales call. And you got to understand, this is like the 70s. So the phone rings, Stephen picks it up and goes, and the guy's like, "Is this the lady of the house?" And Stephen's like, "Yes." And he did this whole, and it just sustained the phone call. "Oh, I'm not sure if we'd be interested in this." And I'm just like, anyway, just to be, so the point is, I just find this very interesting. You have this kind of female person that we would play with. So.
It's not lost on me that the Catholic priest dress code, at least the traditional one, like I grew up FSSP, so all the priests are wearing cassocks all the time, but the Catholic,
you had the whole okay.
It's a dress. It's a dress. So like I don't think I've ever fully understood the critique about how like men can't wear dresses unless you're a priest, because then you have to wear a dress. And I'm like, wait a minute, like what's going on there?
Well, I mean, I was an altar boy, and we had to basically throw this cassock, but I mean, we had something under it. But I just was always tripping over it. I have dyspraxia. I'm very clumsy, combined with dyscalculia. So it's like I have like a hard time existing in space. So I was always tripping over this thing. I had problems like lighting the candles, just anything. I was scared to death that I was going to drop the cruet. But it was just like, well, you should be an altar boy. It was just almost something you did.
Yeah. You didn't have I'm assuming that you didn't have a choice. It was expected of you, and so you did it, right?
Yes. And this is when we went to the Catholic school. They're like, "Oh, you're at the Catholic. Well, you can be an altar boy."
Right. That's exactly how it was for me. I didn't have.
That's when they had like 3 daily masses. Okay, which is almost non-heard of, which was mostly attended by the elderly, and then they had the rosary before it.
Same.
I remember going in the first time freaking out, hearing this, like, what is going on in here? Okay. So that means sometimes you'd have to get the 6:30 or the 7:15, and then you could go to your classes. If you got the 8 a.m., you got to have breakfast at the rectory. That's when the rectories had housekeepers.
Wow.
Okay. The rectory, there were like 5 priests. There were 2 monsignors, and then there was a convent filled with nuns. I looked it up. The school was closed. The convent, they're probably going to tear it down. that parish has been combined with another parish. And I'm not making this like, oh no, Vatican II did that. I think there's a lot more complicated social changes going on here. But I mean, it was a standard Catholic upbringing. When I was 13, I don't know if you're familiar with this person, maybe somebody is. Father Kenneth Roberts wrote this book, From Playboy to Priest. He was this iconic kind of figure. This was like in the 70s. It turns out later he was caught molesting kids. So he came as a speaker, and I was just I think it was kind of like a schoolboy crush. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a priest, you know? I mean, you just get into that. And then when we went to the public, I just lost all interest in going to Mass. When I went to the public high school, the Catholic, I still was not attending Mass. My parents were like, well, just do what you want to do at this point.
That's interesting.
I mean, they weren't going to make me go. The other thing is how old were you when you were confirmed? This has come up with people. How old were you?
Okay, so I was like 10, but that's because I grew up FSSP. It's like the people in my town who went to the normal parish for my town were confirmed at like 16 or something like that. So
I find that much more sensible because we were confirmed at 11.
Okay.
And it was basically memorizing the basic prayer book with Sister Betty. You don't want to mess with Sister Betty. This is how she talks. Sister Betty, sit down. It was like a reign of terror, okay? So we were expected to memorize, what are the Beatitudes. I'm glad we did not memorize the fruits of the Holy Spirit because someone would have gotten in trouble and said apple, banana, orange. That's it. Okay? And it was almost like, well, you're 11, you're sixth grade, you have to do it. And she's like, oh, the bishop's going to ask all these questions. It's like, it was Bishop Abramovich. He was an auxiliary bishop, God rest his soul. He asked like really easy, what I consider baby questions. Like, okay, what is this? What is the sacrament of penance? It wasn't anything major that she thought that we were all like terrified that we were going to screw up these questions. You see, my nephew converted to Judaism. That's a whole other, and so I have grown, as an adult, I have existed primarily in Jewish circles in terms of employment, friends. My late partner was Jewish, and I just found it more meaningful because they had to do so much to do it. It was very much, you're an adult, and to have to memorize that Hebrew, and having studied Hebrew, which is extremely difficult because there's nothing that you can connect to with English. At least New Testament Greek is a Romance language. It's inflected, but they do it when they're like, it's 13. Okay, I get that. Okay, but it just seems like so much more is involved. It's not, okay, we need to get this done.
Yeah.
I'm all for, if you're going to be confirmed, I think you need to be like 18.
So not only do I super agree, but I was confirmed, and my confirmation name, I'll pay the cat tax. My confirmation name was John Vianney, after Saint John Vianney, the patron saint of priests. Because
what a cutie.
I know, look, that's Molly. But I thought I wanted to be a priest when I was 10 because I was 10, and every 10-year-old boy we all wanted to be priests.
When I was like in second grade, we had to like, what do you want to be when you grow up? This is the public school, and I made this little picture of me as a priest with the Roman collar,
Everyone did.
And my confirmation name is Martin. And my sixth grade teacher, Miss Rita, we had lay teachers just as much as nuns.
Yeah, we had lay teachers too.
Married to Mr. Healy, and she's like, oh, which Martin? Martin de Porres or Martin of Tours? I only knew about Martin of Tours. But I wanted to do something a little different then, because everyone was like, I'm just going to pick John. How imaginative, I think the priest thing, I think a lot of it for me was escape, a means of escape. Having been brutally bullied from ages 11 to age 17, it was just anything to escape an intolerable reality. And so what I was into in high school was like Theosophy, Kabbalah, mysticism. I mean, I was always like reading like way, like I was reading Plato when I was 8. So it was anything to kind of just get out of this world completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like what was interesting was, and also I was very attracted to Judaism, and I think a lot of it was just the sense of like being persecuted. Like and when I was that movie Holocaust came out, so I was I was interested in anything but Catholicism, which I guess was a source of being bullied
Yeah, I wanted to ask you
and
about.
being sexually abused too. I was sexually abused by a De La Sallian Christian brother
I'm so
when I
sorry.
was 16. Um, and I publicized this before. What he was doing was cruising the retreat, looking for the gay kids. Not that I knew I was. And of course, then you did not question the priests or the nuns or the brothers. Everything they did was fine. Okay? Actually, my mother finally questioned Sister Betty after she took Stephen's head and dragged him out of a pew by his head. Because
Whoa.
it was 2 to a pew and there wasn't enough room. So so then my mother complained to the priest and there was a meeting. This is after I was there, but the ones you didn't question. Oh, how nice that brother so and so is paying Scott this attention. And wouldn't you think it's kind of odd that this person's picking you up at 10 o'clock at night to drive you to the retreat house, which was in a distant suburb, but that was not questioned.
Jeez.
Or and I was given alcohol to drink, but I was like, wow, this is a great adventure, but I had no idea
Yeah.
because the sex let's do the sex ed thing. So what was your sex ed like in
There was
or was
none.
there sex?
There was
Okay,
none.
well,
Not only that, but when I went to a public high school, my parents actually got me exempted from sex ed even in high school. So even though I went to a public high school, I never took any sex ed ever in my whole life.
all right. This is I would say the order that taught us was the Sisters of St. Joseph, and they were relatively progressive. I mean, Sister Betty was kind of old school, but Sister Pat was one of those ones with the guitars, the pantsuits, like everything was like, woo, Jesus loves me, So I thought this was kind of interesting. So I think it was 7th grade. We had a mini course they called the sex ed Becoming a Person. And I'm thinking like, okay, so we're not persons. Okay, becoming a person. And I don't know if they were influenced by some specific teaching in the magisterium involving like you're becoming a person according to the sexual tenets of I don't know where they got this from. Okay. This is before John Paul II personalism. Okay. But anyway, so the boys got our talk and then the girls got theirs. And guess what? We got the girls' talk. So they did a switch off, which I thought was very progressive.
Yeah.
So we got to find out about, I still can't even say, the time of the month. Okay. But what was not completely made clear to me, and maybe like I missed this, was like I wasn't exactly sure about quote the act. We discussed wet dreams and semen in there. I'm like, so what exactly? So I found out about the act from Sister Pat because no one was exactly sure about it, and I was like thinking, you've got to be kidding me. This is like Grand Central Station. When you don't like the insertion, I'm like, and to this day, I don't think I've ever completely gotten over my like shock about this. Like what? Because when I was a kid, my parents were young. This is very interesting. I think this is kind of feeds into a lot of the dynamic. My parents were very young. My mother actually was mistaken for my sister. Okay, because she was like 20 when she had me and always was like, is that your sister? No, that's my mother. Okay, my dad looked like Sean Connery. I mean, very, very attractive, and they had no issues with physical affection. We knew when they were having sex. They put a sign on the door, do
Huh.
not disturb. And And I remember seeing them make out. Okay. My mother was very beautiful. She was kind of like a Swedish blonde. I mean, every man wanted her. Okay. I mean, when she worked at First National Bank, she was always like, everyone wanted to have lunch with her. This is like the late 50s. Think of, Mad Men. Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember them making up. And then my mother had this little talk about how it's made. So I thought it was made by making up. You made out. That's how I thought that happened. But apparently there was more involved. So
Yeah.
the thing, I, so the thing is, but I didn't know anything else about sex. Like I didn't know about other types of sex. Then my friend Nancy wanted to go to a porn movie at a porn movie theater, and we did it behind my parents' back. They let you in if they were 18. Your mother was just like, and Nancy's mother was like, just be careful because people will masturbate in there. Okay, whatever. And I just did not understand some of the things that were going on. I was like, what? Anyway, but the point is, so there was openness to a certain point
Yeah.
about what was going on. And the thing is, so I went away to college, and then pretty much I've been on my own since I was 21. Now, Stevens got to stay home more. I was pretty much kicked out. That's a whole other story. After I finished like my first grad degree, I think they're like, just get out, try and make your own life. So he worked for a while at Brookfield Zoo at the gift shop. I'm the only member of my family who did not work at Brookfield Zoo. I don't know we lived in Brookfield at one point, okay? And so I just thought it was interesting. He went to the same college I went to, which was Dominican University in River Forest. And my major was English, his was religious studies and philosophy. So we had some of the same teachers. And then he apparently, I don't know what happened, but I guess he had thought he had a vocation and he went into the seminary. I think he was in his late 20s,
How
26 or 20s.
how did Steve wind up so like I mean devout enough that he would go to the seminary in his 20s when like you like weren't even really going to mass in high school? Like how did that happen?
I think it's like I was out of the house when a lot of this was going on. I was already out of the house. I mean, there's
Okay.
not a big age difference between us. Okay. And he went to like both of us went to St. Joe's High School, which is closed, thank God. Talk about horrible education. All they cared about was basketball. Let's not get into that. Um, and and when he was in the seminary, I mean, we were always pretty tight. We would still joke around with a lot of our old jokes. We had a whole sitcom developed involving an imaginary Catholic school called Our Lady of Snows. I even have all the episodes typed out. I can do all the voices for the characters. We had a character. Have you seen the Song of Bernadette?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay, you know that nun who does not believe, like Marie Therese Vozu?
Yeah, and she's the teacher too at the beginning of the film, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
played by the inimitable Gladys Cooper. Okay. And so we developed a character called Felicite Vozu, who's a descendant of that family, who's kind of like, except her voice is the voice of Mae West.
Okay.
Like yeah. So the point, like the campy element, okay? This is like pure camp. It's like, Sister Felicite Vozu will come to the class to talk about the passion of Christ, like everything's suffering. Okay, so this whole sitcom developed around Our Lady of Snows, and I got other people involved with this, friends of mine. I mean, it was everything, And then he was ordained. I went to the ordination, but I had to take International Mr. Leather was going on in Chicago that weekend, which is I usually attend it. So I had to not attend it that particular because it was Memorial Day weekend. But I was fine, I was fine with that. Um, what I thought was interesting about the ordination, I think a lot of what was going on is, it kind of reminds me of the movie Stella Dallas. Like some people can get out of their social class and move up. Steve has moved up. I'm still kind of in the
Huh.
lower middle class area. I mean, I teach at a university, but I'm not, big position. So I'm going there and we're sitting like with like a senator. Okay. I mean, this is like completely like what's going on here, you know?
Superstar, right?
Stephen was also very, very close to Cardinal Bernardin and went to Cardinal. He was one of the acolytes at Cardinal Bernardin's funeral. Then he also, at one point, was going to be the secretary to Cardinal George, but turned it down. This is after he was ordained. So he went to a few parishes, and most of them were fairly affluent parishes. Like his last parish was St. Mary's in Lake Forest. Old money, big old money. Okay. I mean, this is anyway. So, and then he was moved back into the seminary, and I think Barron was teaching there or something. And that's how. And this is when Word on Fire was starting.
Yeah. The Father
And so
Baron, of course, not Bishop Baron yet, right?
yeah, I don't know exactly
Sure.
what was. At
Yeah.
one point, he was the rector of the. I mean, I don't know. I've never. And then I just noticed, like, just he changed. There was like a distance, okay? And I think a lot of it was me. I just was going through a lot. I was like, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. I had a lot of other stuff going on. You know, my partner had died. A lot of other things were going on. And I just, at this point, I was quite perturbed when Benedict was elected, which I kind of thought was going to happen, you know, and the obvious cracking down on, you know, same-sex marriage, you know, LGBTQ issue, you know, I mean, things like that. And I mean, as some of his theology, it's fine, but just I think some of that particular the way it's cracking down it, and then there was like a distance, and then you know then when same-sex marriage was legalized, you know, Barron was very much against it. I'm thinking, so my brother's boss is here, just saying that I don't have civil rights. You know, it's a more complicated issue than that. But you know what? If I want to get married civilly, this has nothing to do with the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Okay.
And I imagine your brother was I mean, as a priest, he has to side with his boss, Bishop Barron, right? He has to.
Of course.
Yeah.
But it's just okay. He changed. And that's a vague statement. I mean, everybody changes. Okay. You know? But it's like, and I just, at one point, I just wasn't really like talking to my family. There was just a lot of things going on. And so my dad died in 2017. Okay. And of course, like Steve said, the Mass. Okay. And we had not been in contact. Okay. For some time. So in the hospice, my dad is dying. And of course, Steve comes in his Roman collar. That's the other thing. You know, and I may sound like a little jealous brat here, but like there had been other times at family gatherings when we were close where, oh yeah, some people they paid the toll from me because they saw my Roman collar. Like, that's not fair. I've talked to this about. I'm Mike Lewis, who does the column Where Peter Is. We've talked. He's like I relate. My brother's a priest too. It's like they're always they just put them on a pedestal like that. Okay.
Absolutely.
You know?
Priests were superstars growing up. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, you know what? It's like, I need that money too. Someone should pay my toll, you know? And then he's like, oh, you know, and he went all over the world, you know, had all these experiences all over the world because he did that documentary Catholicism. You know, I'm thinking like, wow, and here am I like a jealous friend. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm working like 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs. Like my big deal was going to Walgreens.
Yeah.
You know, anyway, so he said, you know, he said the Mass, and at that point I was very much tending toward a possible conversion to Judaism. I've studied the Torah in Hebrew. I mean, I know more about it than a lot of my Jewish. They're like, why do you know about this? You know? I took, intro to the Hebrew Bible with Michael Fishbane University. I mean, I thought, maybe I could do this. I don't know. There, anyway, and so I was just like, well, I'm going to have to go to this mass, mostly for my mother, and I thought um, one of my brothers, Chris, is pretty much an atheist, as is they want nothing to do with organized religion. They're even more vehemently against. I'm interested intellectually. I can make jokes about, it's still part of my psyche. It's never going to go away. Okay. So a friend of mine who has never met my family, has never met my brother, comes to the funeral. Okay. And I introduced her around into my dad's twin sister, the whole thing. Okay. And by the way, my dad was cremated. Apparently you can do that now. When I was growing up, it was not allowed.
Yep. I remember my family made a very big deal about how none of us were allowed to get cremated because it's not in line with church teaching. That has changed, but
well, Stephen actually asked Sister Judy a question about this. It's like, okay, so when you rise, resurrection of the dead, it's like, what's your body? It's going to be like you were when you're 33 years old, because that's a part. I'm just, what if your body was a wreck when you were 33? But anyway, and so this is someone who's coming in completely objectively, okay? And this is what she says to me. She's like, you know what? Your brother Steve is a pompous ass. And I was like, oh my God. And I would agree with this person's opinion, okay? And then I told my brother and sister-in-law, and the laughter was just, but this is, and we, at this point, we have all this, well, the self-importance. I wouldn't say, didn't Pope Francis say something about the little monsters? Something about Pope Francis was very much against what this type of clericalism that was coming out of the John Paul II contingent of seminarians. Okay. Oh. So he referred to them as, quote, these little monsters, parading around in their lace. Okay. And I'm so great. And, I have the key to the secrets of the rosary or what. Okay.
Right.
I don't know if you call Stephen in that particular contingent, but I can certainly see that particular direction coming in, because I have not seen or spoken to him since my dad's funeral. We don't speak. We don't communicate. Well, it doesn't help that his boss blocked me.
What did you say that got Bishop Barron to block you?
Okay. This will segue someone into this. And, I admit, okay, I was just being a troublemaker, but, all right. So, I think this was I was also blocked by Word on Fire as well.
Oh, the official Word on Fire account.
I don't know why I was blocked by that, okay, but I was blocked because he was going on and on about Michelangelo, and the beauty of the figures who have muscles. Okay.
I wanted to ask you about that.
All right. And so we will. Okay. And so then I'm like, so I made a note. I just said, yeah, and Michelangelo was gay, homosexual. I was blocked.
Really? But that's like a historic. Michelangelo
wrote
wrote poems to his lovers, some of whom were men, right?
Yes.
That's just like a thing of history. Like, why would that get you blocked?
I probably thought I was just trying to cause trouble. I don't know.
Fun fact, I grew up learning about Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel and all that. Never knew that he was gay until I went to a Michelangelo exhibit like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Straight up. Because that was just conspicuously omitted from my education about Michelangelo growing up. I wonder why.
I was reading about this, in my 20s. And the other thing is because of my upbringing, I think it delayed a lot of experiences that I needed to experience. I didn't come out till I was 26. Okay. And it was like, you know what? At this point, I was like, screw it. I have to do what works. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like, and I admit it was a selfish decision, but it's like, it wasn't going to work, you know?
It
And,
was selfish to
and the
come
thing,
out.
well, it was like a lot of people say, well, that was a selfish decision. You should have been thinking about, other, or the, no,
Yeah,
like,
strong
I'm not,
disagree.
exactly. I'm not, it's like, come on. Like, so you're not supposed to be intimate with another person. Okay. So in other words, well, fine, I'll just remain celibate, and then why don't I just become a monk, or I'd rather just become a nun. But yeah, I mean, I was just like, and and there was, and people were like, they already figured it out. I mean, there wasn't a big dramatic thing, but I was like, I'm going to have to do this.
Yeah.
But so I missed a lot of things that I should have been focusing on because I was not sure about what I was. So I probably should have been getting a PhD. Then there was like no, I was completely like kind of at sea. Like, what's going on? What am I going to do? There wasn't a lot of guidance from anybody. The most guidance I got after coming out was from two of the nuns who taught me at Dominican University, the Cincinnati Dominicans, who got in trouble with Benedict for being too liberal. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, okay, getting to the muscles.
Yeah, I've been very curious about that, and
Okay.
maybe what I'll do is I'll tell you what I've heard, and then I'll also tell you kind of like my thoughts about it up until
Okay.
today, and I'll let you kind of like, you know,
Great.
maybe change.
Okay.
So here is what I've heard, and this is really just like rumors, right? I've heard that for whatever reason, Bishop Barron, who himself is a fairly muscular guy, likes to surround himself with other oddly muscular men. Um,
Yes.
and I looked at a couple pictures, and I was kind of like, this is a little weird. Well, so first of all, your brother, his biceps are enormous. But the Glor or whatever his name was, the man
Mhm.
who was accused of sexual assault, he was a very muscular man. I mean, he got famous on
Yeah.
MTV for losing weight and getting very muscular and all that. And there was like
Yes.
other people too within Word on Fire, all like very muscular men. And I also heard that these very muscular men were like all underqualified and overpaid within Word on Fire, which seems like a little bit weird. It's almost like Bishop Barron might be like selecting men based on aesthetics instead of based on qualifications. Now that's what I've
Yeah.
heard.
Okay. Um, what that is pretty much the common story.
Okay.
Sean Michael Winters wrote an article about this way before this scandal blew up.
Okay.
And and I read this article, and I used to write a weekly column about LGBTQ issues or just anything I wanted to write about, and I got paid to do it. I'm going to say, unlike some of my colleagues, I actually got paid to write something. Okay. Okay. And that job evaporated during the pandemic. And so I, the place that I did for used to sell a lot of retro historical gay related materials. Okay. Some of which were, quote, naughty, some of which were actually his, well, pretty much everything that was historically significant. The owner had a collection of muscle magazines from as far back as 1910. Okay.
Wow.
So I was looking at some of the magazines from the 30s and the 40s, and I even wrote an article about this, which has not been published. Scopophilia, the male gaze. Okay. So even though these magazines were not ostensibly, gay, they were certainly homoerotic. And I noticed in some of the ads there was a lot of double entendre, seeking somebody who likes movies and plays the organ and likes to work out together. That's pretty coded language, okay? And also World War II, you had a lot of the guys getting together. I mean, that's kind of, anyway, just given gay history. And so kind of getting to that point and kind of getting into the camp element, you're going to see how this goes. Mae West liked to surround herself with a bunch of these bodybuilders. Okay, so there's a lot of pictures of her, and she's got, these guys posing, okay? And so Sean Michael Winters put this picture in the article of Mae West. He's like, something is going on here, which is not dissimilar to what this particular dynamic is. Okay. You could say, okay, and I talked to somebody about this, you could be like a straight guy and certainly admire somebody else's body in the gym. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be sexual. Okay. There's always going to be an element of physical competition. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that ends up being sexual, but like, well, my muscles are bigger than yours, like whatever. Okay. I can bench press, 3 years. Okay. But he even mentioned something very odd was going on. He connected to kind of this whole Gerardian concept of mimetic desire, which is pretty much our consumer landscape now. I can come up with a better Instagram picture than you, okay? It's like mimetic means imitation, mimesis. So Gerard came up with this, that's pretty much the basis of culture, and the violence that comes out of culture is this type of competition. And when it becomes competition between equals, it can get really deadly. If it's kind of worshiping a model from afar, the distance is there. When the distance collapses, confusion results. So he's saying it's interesting that Barron, being such a Gerardian, is completely feeding into this commercialism. In Word on Fire, I'm thinking of this came out after what's going on with this Word on Fire Bible? I mean, a lot of people seem to like it. I'm just wondering, like, what's going on with that? It's like you could get just as much commentary from the New Revised Standard Version or the Jewish Annotated New Testament, which is more in line with the scholarship. I know, because I've taught the Bible as literature, and I use both of them, or the Jewish Study Bible. It's got great, okay? And I'm thinking, why are people? But it's almost like, well, I got to be the top person in everything. Okay. Hello?
Hey, Scott. So sorry about that. My internet was being weird for a second.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry.
I thought that was me. Okay.
I thought it was you at first for a second too, and then my internet went out, and I was like, "Oh no, that was definitely me."
I thought that was me because I'm on a Wi-Fi rather than a broadband. But anyway, so it's almost like feeding into this like commercialism, and I'm also thinking he connected. Why are you so obsessed with the bodybuilders? It's just like something is odd. And I don't want to be scurrilous, and go, okay, like there's a website called Clean the Church, which made a whole bunch of allegations, which are completely scurrilous. But I just find this very, very odd. And I'm not the only person. And a Twitter friend of mine, who's a canon lawyer, was very disturbed when the scandal come out. And she sent me a picture of my brother, and he was doing some kind of like He-Man pose. She thought, this looks demonic.
I've seen that picture. Yeah.
And I'm just like, what is going on here? And I am not a medical expert, but is he on steroids? I don't know.
I think so. So I'm also not a medical expert, but I actually do watch a lot of fitness related content.
Okay.
And your brother is large enough that I would be shocked if he wasn't on. And I'm not like, is human growth hormone a steroid? No. But is he taking HGH? Probably. Like I'm not saying that he's eating trenbolone sandwiches, Tren being another one of the really popular steroids, but your brother looks to me like somebody who takes something. Like it's not entirely natural, which there's not to take away from anybody's hard work. I feel like sometimes people hear steroids means that you cheated. I don't think that steroids means that you cheat. I think steroids lets you achieve beyond what your natural potential would allow you to achieve. So not to take away from his accomplishments, He's freaking massive.
Well,
Your brother's
I
biceps
just
are
don't
bigger
know
than my
where this
head.
started coming from. I think he was doing weights in the seminary or maybe before, but this is going to sound like catty, but of the four, he is the shortest. So I don't know if there's like, and people said he's gotten a pull. I do not know, but I just don't get what's going on here. He contributed to some book called Man Up. It's that whole tendency, um, literally muscular Christianity, literally, okay? And I'm just like, what is going on here? And then he had some kind of publicity. Oh, he's like the bodybuilding, weightlifting priest. I don't know what's going on here, but I just find this very, very odd. And I do not want to make any claims about his sexual orientation. But sometimes when you're repressing something, that's a possible direction. I don't know. But there was a picture, and if I could find this, I should send it to you. Of they're all. I think it was him. I don't know if a Baron was in the picture. It might have been Glor. I don't remember which one. They're all sitting on this couch, and there's a picture, and the tension on that couch. I'm not sure what it was. If it was mimetic desire tension, I don't know. But I'm thinking like this. I was waiting for them to rip off all their clothes and just start. I don't know, but I'm just finding. I mean, if that's what he wants to do, fine. But it's just like I just have some issues with like if you're repressing something, like be honest about it.
But they
I don't
can't.
know.
They can't because the organization that they are employed by and they've committed their lives to says not only that like gay people aren't allowed to have rights or anything, but that especially priests aren't allowed to because the Lavender mafia,
Well, not
right?
all
We're not.
those guys are. Well, but not all those guys are priests. Like some of those guys, they're married and the wife stays home
Oh,
and they have like 10 million
that's
kids.
true. I mean, yeah, that is
I
true.
mean,
And
I make a generalization, but it is true,
yeah,
you know?
Glor
I mean,
himself was not a priest, of course.
yeah, ostensibly straight, whatever. But he was on Instagram and he had quite a gay following. I know because I checked it.
Huh. That it,
Because he fits this element in gay where you have the muscles and the tattoos. He certainly like it fits a certain image that would in certain like gay subcultures, that would be there. But I'm just like, what is going on with my brother? And then my mother told me this is completely totally that he has lost all feeling in his feet. Okay. And I'm just like, I'm diabetic. I don't know if this is a diabetic thing. Again, a lot of this I'm just getting is hearsay. But see, the issue is when this blew up, I was concerned about how my mother would react to this. Now, a lot of it she didn't completely understand, but finally one of her had to sit down and tell her that this is what was going on in case someone in church or something told her about it.
mm-hmm.
When that blew up, I was getting a lot of messages because I know a lot of people on Catholic Twitter. Like, we're so sorry. I was like, I don't even know what's going on myself. And someone from the organization, I'm not going to say, reached out to me who had worked there and left the organization. A lot of people left. I think it was more of an issue of a lack of transparency. But the other thing, what hold did this Glor person have over Baron and my brother? That's what I would like to know. What was going on here?
So, do you think for a moment we could step back and talk about Joey Glor?
Yeah.
Because not everybody in my audience. So, in fact, towards the beginning of this stream, a couple people were saying, what scandal with Word on Fire? Right here, what scandal? I searched online and found nothing. So not everybody is familiar with the scandal, and
Okay.
even I myself wasn't super familiar with it, only because Like, I think that my family was just never a huge, like, Bishop Barron family
Mhm.
in general. So it might be helpful to my audience if we just zoom out and talk about what actually
Okay.
happened at Word on Fire, and what did Joey Glor have to do with any of this?
Okay. Now I put a link up because Chris Damian did a lot of extensive research. So a lot of this I'm pretty much going to just be like repeating a lot of what was going on in that link. And actually I'm going to open it up here because I don't want to like misrepresent anything. Because he did a very thorough and we were like direct messaging on, and I just have to go back into my direct messages here. He was hired, I know, in some administrative position, and as you said, he was apparently making a lot more money than everybody else because somebody did found the records or something. I'm not sure if they're a 501c3, but certainly the records were like certainly available. Okay, just give me a minute. I just need to go back to 22 here. Sorry.
No problem.
Um,
And
I just,
while you're finding it, I will add that I think that Word on Fire did an unfortunately good job of making sure that this news didn't get out, because what we're about to discuss is like public information. In as much as like
it is.
if you know to search for it, you'll find it. But if you just kind of like, I feel like broader Catholic culture never really talked about Word on Fire's complicity in sexual assault. And that was one reason why I was particularly happy to do today's episode, was because I
Yeah,
wanted.
well, see, Chris Damon, yeah, see, Chris Damon did a whole series on this. I was supposedly a couple other people, Brian Fraga, Jen Morrison, and Kat, they had actually spoke with me. I said, I really don't know much more than you do. They were kind of like, what's the personal angle here? So apparently, Glor, he was a professional bodybuilder. He experienced a religious conversion and made his way to Bishop Barron's Word on Fire. Apparently, Barron is into this whole thing. I made the conversion. Like, that whole Shia LaBeouf thing. That's another feather in his mimetic
Oh
desire cap. I can
yeah.
convert just as many people as you. So he was named assistant contact director, highest. Um, and so a National Catholic Reporter piece called Word on Fire's Motive Engagement with Glor Crass and emblematic of sex. That's the article I was talking to you about by Sean Michael Winters. Okay. And Steve Grunow has been criticized for bodybuilding self promotion. Okay. Right. So apparently there was October 13th, I think this was 2022, was made available to me by Word on. There was a transcript of a meeting by Word on Fire employee, which actually I had note about that. Four women alleging some kind of inappropriate, or abusive sexual behavior from Glor. Word on Fire hired an attorney, during which one of the women withdrew her complaint. And two others, as Barron put it, chose not to cooperate. The investigation proceeded with the fourth woman. Also, there seemed to be some issue that the woman shared something on Facebook. No, it was in a private group chat, which somehow was made public.
Well,
So it
Barron leaked.
determined,
Barron said
well,
in an interview, right? Isn't that what happened?
yeah, there seemed to be some issue whether it was on Facebook, and apparently it was leaked through a group chat. Again, I'm just
Okay.
kind of going with this. And then the investigation determined it was not non-consensual. Glor had been put on leave. Um, Related to Barron's letter to a suffering church. There was a big meeting about this. According to Damien, Barron himself did not seem to see the woman as a victim. I think in a lot of this, he gives the context of, the sexual abuse crisis in the church and being transparent, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Barron very much supported Glor. I'm just kind of just like going through, just kind of gives the, Barron refers to the woman as accusers, very much a public relations issue. Um, I will say this about my brother. Apparently, when this was going down, apparently there were some reports of my brother's demeanor being absolutely terrifying, saying if anyone says anything about this, you'll be fired on the spot. So
Whoa.
I'm just saying there could be I'm just saying a lot of people left, including Elizabeth Scalia, who is a respected, okay. So I'm thinking something, and then kind of again, I'm just getting this from that there was a general this is not just Glor, a general atmosphere of good old boys club type of talk, okay. And a lot of the women felt uncomfortable with this type of talk for some time, okay. Glor being one of these people, okay. So it's kind of this, you're kind of getting a toxic, or implications of a toxic type of work environment. Okay. So Glor was terminated, and then they put my brother on a leave,
Oh, I
and
actually
he
didn't
pretty
know
much
that.
did. And then he disappeared from social media. Everyone's like, "Where is Steve Grunow?" I was like, "I don't know." And then this is kind of the clincher. And again, everyone can look at this. You're going to get a lot better information from this link. Okay. Was kind of just skimming through this because Chris did a lot of very thorough research here on this link. So it's interesting that after this incident, the Pope decided to move Barron to Minnesota and gave him his own diocese, the Diocese of Rochester, Minnesota. So that's like going from California, Muscle City, to the frozen wastelands of Lutheran potluck suppers. And I know, because I have a friend who's from Minnesota. He's like, there's nothing going on there. There's literally sheep. Okay, there's not a lot going on there. So I'm like, why was he moved?
You think
I mean,
that?
in some ways, it
Yeah.
was a promotion because Barron was an auxiliary bishop, and now he's got his own diocese up there.
Do you think that in part the move was like a reshuffling, like the way that the church always used to kind of just reshuffle priests, like shuffle priests around who were accused of like sexual assault? And I know Barron was never accused of sexual assault.
Yeah, it just seems rather, again, circumstantial evidence, but it just seems like that's kind of interesting. And then I usually get information. I was getting information from my mother. Oh, Steve's going to Minnesota with Bishop Barron. I'm like, oh, hey, that's nice. Like, what is going on here? All right. You know? And I'm thinking, like, well, he gets this nice, like, paid leave and everything, and I can't even take a sick leave or anything. I've had some health problems because I can't live on half of my set. I'm just like, the privilege. And I just like, so in there's, you get to take your leave or whatever, and then you can come back and everything. So, and we're back. I'm not, I don't know. It's not anything that I think was the point where they'd have to get like the actual insert something involving like law enforcement or anything. I'm just saying it just, I think it was a lack of transparency, not listening to people. And again, the hold of the bodybuilder culture in this organization, I just find very, very disturbing. This is what I find disturbing is, okay, I teach for a public university, okay? I'm also a mandated reporter for Title IX, okay? I had a friend, or not a friend, he's a friend of a friend, who is a registered sex offender. Okay, this blew up a few years ago, and I had to tell him, I said, I cannot go near this person. And so I cannot hang out with this person anymore. Okay. So it's kind of like, So there's some stuff that I could not open up an OnlyFans account. Well, I mean, I could, but if that came out, I could lose my
Right.
job.
Right.
All right. And I'm understand. I'm a state. I'm a public employee.
Mm-hmm.
Word Empire is a private, but still, it's an organization that claims to have some mission. This is like, what's going on here? And there were a lot of calls for Steve to resign as CEO, which I'm thinking that would have been the honorable thing to do, but he's still the CEO. It just seems to me like, where is the justice or the equity here? I'm not seeing it at all.
A friend of mine texted me when he saw this stream to say, "Hey, I'm really glad that you're talking about this because I actually knew people who worked at Word on Fire, and they left Word on Fire in 2022 because of, and I'm going to use the word that my friend used. They left because of all of the fuckery that was going on at Word of Fire.
Yeah.
And my understanding, and again, this is me speaking as an outsider, but my understanding of what the fuckery in question is that it was just a culture, like a boys' club, machismo.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so I don't think that women felt very comfortable working there. And yeah, and I guess I wonder, like you were saying earlier, how much of that machismo is kind of a product of, and again, I almost hate to like use language like this, but like the whole compensating thing, like where sometimes men who, are gay but don't want to admit it, or they're like overboard on the manly stuff. So I don't know, but
you know what? It's probably more complicated, but it certainly is a factor. Okay. And again, I'm making a generalization, but a lot of men who are homophobic, I'm not saying a lot, they're, virulently repressing. And again, that is a generalization.
Right.
Okay. A lot of people, there's some studies against this, but this is not, it just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem like it is, quote, normal for an organization of that nature for this type of culture to be going on. Okay. Or not so much normal, it just does not seem ethically, socially, psychologically acceptable or healthy. If someone wants to go to the gym and build their muscles, that's fine, but that's not your work. Why don't they all just get a job working for the gym? Why don't we just have Barron's Gym? I think there was a joke about that. There were a lot of jokes about this. Or Barron and his Muscle Boys or something. I don't know. And the other thing is, now my mother is in a nursing home run by the Little Sisters of the Poor, which they're pretty strict. You're talking the habit, and I just found out that Father Stephen is in charge of my mother's money now. And I'm thinking, I don't agree with that. I just don't trust him generally, I wonder it's pretty much the main, and how this is the other thing that just, I'm conflicted here is, we were trying to find a place for her because she's indigent because my dad had cancer and that wiped out everything they had. Okay. And she had been failure to thrive, been suffering from dementia. And we were trying to find a place that would, so we got her into Little Sisters of the Poor. You know why? Because my brother knows the Mother Superior. Okay. And it's a real good place. I was there actually Sunday. I've been trying to go like every other Sunday. But I'm just like, and then I go in there and I'm in the EWTN super Catholic world. I walked in there, I'm like, why are there all these pictures and statues? Oh my God. This is almost like pre-Vatican II. It's like the Divine Mercy pictures all over the place.
The tiger up.
Oh my God. I know. It's like, and Sunday their big thing is Mass, and they had the Corpus Christi procession. I'm sitting there, oh my God, I'm going to die. I do take my mother to mass because it helps, and I just kind of sit there and I think I might be aesthetically and intellectually drawn toward aspects of Catholicism. I think I'm kind of there with that. If you, because you were just like, where are you at the moment? Um, I did like the Gregorian chant when they did Ave Verum Corpus during the. I mean, just stuff like that, you know. Um, I, Intellectual, I just find it very interesting. I mean, it's just I don't know exactly where I am exactly theologically. I think my issue is like, where does Jesus fit into this? Okay. I actually, when I was studying Hebrew, actually, I felt more in kind of a meditative, contemplative zone than anything that I had ever experienced in Catholicism. 6 hours went by,
Huh.
and it was like the eternal now because I was like focusing on the letters and everything, you know, because I'm a verbal person. So it's I don't think I've ever really got to that point in anything involving Catholicism, other than just Catholicism. I will say, in many ways, for me, was Marian apparitions and getting yelled at.
Yep. Yep. That's
And
how I grew
I've said this to some of my
up.
students. I've said this to some of my students because they're fascinated. Like, because I grew, I mean, they're so much younger. I'm like, you know, when I was growing up, and I have a brother who actually brought this up. It's like we were always getting yelled at. It was like, and there were layers of getting yelled at. So parents, teachers, priests, nuns, neighbors, relatives, you're always getting scolded.
Yep.
Probably not, I don't know what, but it just there were late. It wasn't just like one person yelling at. Anyone could yell at you. Sit down. And you're always kind of on edge, like whether
Oh,
you were going
yes.
to get, and I mean, I don't think it was a but that you were going to get in trouble or get punished or something like that. You know, some of it was not necessarily involved with the church. I think that a lot of that was like growing up when I was growing up, which was interesting because when were you born?
95.
Okay, I was in my 30s then. Okay, let's. um, when I was growing, it was really weird because like you were always getting yelled at, but then you were pretty much left alone to play, ride your bikes. So in some ways, you were completely unsupervised. There were no play dates. You were just out on the street playing. No one would call the police. Okay, I was babysitting when I was 11. Okay, you know, I mean, but then you get this whole thing about getting yelled at or like you
Yeah.
did something wrong. But it's like, oh, just go, come back when it's dark, go trick or treat, whatever. There was one kid in the neighborhood got lost. This was the family across the street. I think she had 6 kids in 6 years. Let's not go there with that. Super Catholic. One of their kids got lost. You think we called the police? No, we went out on our bikes. That was the type of this weird sense of independence versus complete control, that paradox, which I think has a lot to do with just our family dynamic and just the way that I've turned out. It's like I want to be independent, but I also need like the sense of control. I have to control reality or something's going to like fall apart. So anyway, I just back to this Minnesota thing. I just found this very, very odd that now Stephen is in Minnesota.
And he's still there to this day. Like he's.
Yes, yeah, because he flew down at one point to
So I have a
see my
question.
mother.
So is your brother not part of any diocese or anything? Or is he part of like the same diocese as Bishop Barron? Like, is he a pastor of a chapel?
No, 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 he's not. He has not been connected, as far as I know, connected officially with a
So
parish.
he's just the CEO of
Yeah,
Word on Fire.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure he says mass at different. I mean, as far as I know, and I'm not going to say that that's true, okay? But yeah, not that I know of. No.
Yeah, man. That's strange to me. I guess I don't like I don't personally know. I know plenty of priests personally. I don't know a single priest that's not tied to either a chapel or a seminary. I know priests who are stationed at the FSSP seminary in Nebraska. But it's all either at a chapel or at a seminary. I don't know any priest. Like the other priest who comes to mind is that one priest who was just laicized. I forget his name, but he was like living in Texas, but like he hadn't been part of any diocese for like 20 something years. And he's like the Canceled Priest Project guy. Not Strickland, but
Pavone, Frank. Is it
Pavone.
Frank?
That's it, Frank Pavone.
Frank
Yes.
Pavone. Yes. Yes.
So your brother is a little bit like Frank Pavone, not laicized, but in as much as he was a priest without a home, kind of like a priest who could kind of just do whatever he wants because he's part of Word on Fire.
I do not know. I mean, at one point he was at the seminary with Barron, but like I don't think he's associated with the parish. I guess if they asked him, because my mother said that he said mass at the Little Sisters of the Poor. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's weird.
It is very odd. But to be honest, after his behavior, would you want him involved in pastoral activities? No.
And I guess, what do you do with priests who are like unfit for pastoral activities anyway? Maybe you make them the CEO of Word on Fire. I don't know.
I do not know. I mean, it's like, unless again they stay at the seminary, they do studies or they do research, or maybe they're associated with a Catholic university or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, this is kind of, again, where I am with some of this. It's like, I'm kind of a Pope Francis fan. I just thought that was very kind of. I mean, obviously, doctrines are not going to change, but I think he's just got the right pastoral approach. And it's not like soppy. It's not soppy, but it's there. I think he's radical. He's not liberal or conservative. He's radical. And I can get that. So anyway, I'm thinking like, okay, so we talk about the gospel, whatever that means, okay? Whatever that means, okay? Thinking like, well, if you're going to kind of take a Pope Francis framing of the gospel, and I hope this doesn't sound like, well, I'm more righteous than Father Steve, but you know what? I live in rented accommodations, which are falling apart. I do not make a lot of money. I take the bus. I teach underprivileged people. My life in some ways, well, maybe you chose that. Well, you know what? There's certain things that I can't do. I can't do anything involving numbers, my career. I'm thinking like that seems to be more in, I take the bus. I just don't live. My life is modest, And I'm thinking, well, Steve gets his toll paid for, gets to travel around the world. I think there's a condo in Florida. Seems to have a new car every year. Seems to have a lot of disposable income.
Has enough money that he, like, because it takes money to be as fit as your brother. Like, it's not something like poor people.
Okay, that's a good point. I don't know. I guess you'd have to pay for a gym or I don't know. But it's no problem for him to take a plane in. I took a vacation like the end of January. I had not been anywhere since 2012. I had to liquidate some money because I needed to take a vacation, Went to New York City to see the opera. But I'm thinking like, who's like closer to what I thought was impressive. I was impressed with Francis. I'm just going to eat in the cafeteria like other people, like that impressed me. None of this, like I'm above, the hierarchy. I'm just like, a condo in Florida must be nice. I just find this very, and I know diocesan priests do not take a vow of poverty. I am aware of this, but come on, where's your sense of proportion here? And then Barron's going to that Napa event.
In California, Napa Valley, like the wine. I don't know about this. What's
It's
that?
it's some like big Catholic conservative conference, like tons of money. Okay, probably people know more about this. I'm just like, okay, so you're like hobnobbing with, I'm just like, what's going on here? Who's serving the food at this place? Who's cleaning up? I just don't. It just seems to be a lot. I guess I'm radical this way. I mean, no one is going to be completely equal, but come on, like, where's your sense of proportion here? You know,
Yeah.
it's and there's people. I mean, there's people. I mean, everyone's struggling now. Inflation, everything. You know, the middle class is employed. There's a lot of other issues than Barron going on and complaining about the word woke, which no one seems to be clear actually what it means. Okay, or hobnobbing with I don't want to start on Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro. He's
I
again
know.
like it's like what? Where are you with this? You know. And what I'm thinking, so Bishop Barron was too quote left for the Society of right
Yeah, I mean,
for
I grew
your
up
group.
FSSP, and we didn't consider Barron to be one of our own. We considered him out of, as far as the Novus Ordo goes. He's good as far as the Novus Ordo goes, but he's still not tried. Oh, and we got really mad at him for implying like 10 years ago or whatever that like perhaps everybody winds up going to
Hell was
heaven.
empty.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know the hell. I remember that the hell was empty. I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I
we were
can
big
get
mad about
this.
that.
It's not like I completely disagree, but I'm thinking like sometimes I look at theirs, I'm thinking like, you know what, like that's great. There's all these interesting stories about saints and lords of the. What does this have to do with the actual reality of people and what they're doing? Nothing.
Yeah,
Okay, nothing. And guess what? The Catechism is not the answer to everything. And I do not purport to be an expert. I've read parts of the Summa by Thomas Aquinas. My dad had a copy. One time, my dad was going to be a priest, so we had a lot. And I'm like, you know what? Some of this doesn't follow logically. It does not connect to reality. At least, the messiness of reality or whatever. I don't see it. But I'm just like, I don't, and I've watched some of his stuff and I'm like, okay, it's orthodox. I can see where people would get to it. But what kind of, did you hear about this? Oh, you're going to love this. A graduate student I met on Twitter, he's doing some stuff in Gerard. So we met, we wanted to, and he said that he met Barron and my brother because apparently at one point, Barron and my brother were trying to start their own religious order. Did you hear about this?
no.
Yeah. And I'm like, what? I think it was at Notre Dame, or there was some type of event, and this script, he's like, oh yeah, I met your brother. I'm like, and they were like trying to see if I was interested in joining this religious order. I'm like, what? Where is this coming from? So now you want your own religious order.
And when was this? Like recently?
This was, no, maybe like a few years ago, but
Okay,
still,
so
I'm
it
like,
hasn't gotten off the ground yet.
apparently not.
But these things take time.
But I'm just where. What now? You want your? It reminds me of the movie The Trouble with Angels. You got so many medals, you might as well just start your own church.
Yeah. I mean, I do wonder if that's like, unless he becomes the Pope, there's not a whole lot higher for Bishop Barron to climb. So what's next for him? Starting a religious order, maybe? I don't know. I mean,
Well, guess what? I guess your religious order, might have to think about the poverty vow. Might not exactly work with the way that you live. That's all I'm going to say.
yes, yeah. This is
Oh,
going.
yes. Okay, well, I got a good, playing God. Okay, thank you. Yes, the Napa Catholic. Thank you for that. Yes, that explains. Yes,
So
American Catholic bishops and the far right. Yes,
interesting.
yes.
So is this Napa Valley conference like a far right kind of thing?
The again, I'm just going. The people who run it, they become more far right. You're talking like Catholics need to vote for you know who.
Right.
They're that, and that's why Barron got it actually. And there was an article recently in the National Catholic Reporter. Um, The Rise of Bullying. What is the title? The Rise of the Catholic Bully. I'm thinking it's not rising. That's been around for a while. Catholic bully. They had a picture of Barron. And apparently he got upset because Commonweal, there was a reference that Barron was supporting people who supported you know who. And he wanted to sue Common and just blah, blah, blah. And just like, well, you are.
I mean, my whole community was kind of like a look. We have to vote Republican every single time because of abortion. Like it's just like that's
Yes.
it. Like because of abortion, we're
It's
voting.
all about abortion.
Yeah.
Well, and this is really interesting. Giving a Chicago context, you might find this interesting sociologically. Chicago has always been a Democratic stronghold.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Chicago has also been, not so much more, but it's a predominantly Catholic city. Okay. Almost inevitably, Catholics voted Democratic. Okay. That only started to shift, with the culture wars, going on. So my parents, they always voted Democratic. We would never have thought of voting Republican at all. So I just found this very interesting, given the type of sociological. It's like that's who you voted for. It was kind of this Catholic Democratic fortress.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, again, this is before, a lot of, and again, but now it's all about abortion. And then it's also about, quote, the gays.
Yeah.
Are going to destroy the city, destroy the. I'm thinking, well, if I had that much power, I would have destroyed a lot.
When you go to your gay agenda meetings, if you're not talking about the destruction of the Western, society, then what are you talking about at those gay agenda meetings?
Well, let me give you a Gerardian. I'll give you a Gerardian theory about this, and I taught this. So, Gerard has this interesting view that we don't persecute others because of difference. That's usual. Like, I don't like you because you're different, the other. And I taught this to my students, and it's a mind FUCK. It's not so much difference, it's because of lack of difference. So you got two systems. You got, say, the red system and the orange system. The orange and red system want to remain separate and pure. If someone from the red system goes into the orange system, that person will be person, but not because they're different, it's because they're blurring the boundaries between the systems. That's why we had this emphasis on segregation. So if someone's gay, it's creating a lack of difference because the standard is you have a man and a woman and they are different. They complement. So that's therefore you don't have two of the same doing it together and it creates confusion. So a lot of what's going on here boils down to that. And a lot of people, they're not getting that. It's people want to be different, but they want to be the same in their difference, like your group. Yes. It's totally like your group, okay?
Yes.
So everyone has got to be the same, but we have to be different from the noble.
Yes. Yeah.
And see, once you get your mind around, it's like, this is what is going on. And this is all the rhetoric that has been coming from the right, this is the rhetoric of the whole thing. All right. So that is why they are so against the same sex. They're not going to say that's why, but that's why they are the same. That's your Gerardian lesson for the day. But I knew this. I just knew that this is what was going on. But again, I'm not like a big shot, so no one's going to listen to me. But my students are like, wow, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because Chicago is also a very segregated city. And it's almost like, what are you doing in this neighborhood? It's still like that. Like, you don't go into, like, why are you here? It's like you're crossing the boundary. You're blurring. And a lot of Catholicism, the way it used to be taught, is about boundaries. Very strict boundaries. It depends on how those boundaries, the strictness, it depends on the level. It's about boundaries are important, but not if they're used to keep people out or keep people in or like deprive people of certain choices. So, do you have any other I'm trying to think if I can think of any other. I'm hoping people were thinking they were getting a lot of dirt. I don't have a whole lot at this point.
Hey,
Okay.
Gumby says what a great
Who's Gumby?
conversation, and Scott is a lot of fun, and fair play to him for being so open. So you have plenty of fans in the audience. I have a question for
Oh,
you, if that's all
yeah.
right. So we touched on it only very briefly, but the "Where are you now?" question. So if you
Yeah.
had to pick a word to describe yourself out of the following three words, which word would you pick? And it's just going to be atheist, agnostic, or theist of some type. You know, being Jewish is being a theist, right? And being a Catholic is being a theist.
Kind of. I would say a theist of some type,
Okay.
but I'm also kind of in I find panentheism kind of interesting. That's like
Me too.
Spinoza.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I kind of had this weird, it's not weird. For me, like this real presence thing, it's not just, okay, let's not get into the miracles of well, I have something to say about that. Okay. It's kind of like the divine indwelling. And you get this in Catholic mysticism, like the dwelling of the Trinity. Okay. So I'm kind of thinking that could be a focus to see the indwelling of God in the creation in like this real presence in that particular moment. And and actually I brought this up at this conference of open and relational theology last summer. It was about Gerardian, and this is kind of my take on the Gospel of Mark, which is very disturbing when you just sit down and you just read it. It's violent.
Yeah, the
I
Gospel of
this
Mark is compelling. That's the word that I use.
and they're like, my God. Anyway, so kind of this is kind of like Jurgen Moltmann's The Crucified God. I've kind of got some of this from this, but also kind of from Gerard too. Is so you get this death on the cross, and it's just ugly. It's terrible, you know. And you get, my God, why have you abandoned me? I mean, there's no glamour in this death. There's no heroism. It's just horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it exposes the absurdity and the horror of violence. And it doesn't glorify it the way that other sacred systems have done. And this is where I think Catholicism has failed.
Huh.
So then the way the Gospel of Mark ends is you have an empty tomb. He's gone. There's no one to worship in the old way where you have the scapegoat king dying and rising again. That's the radical part. The other stuff was added. So, in other words, you're on your own to figure out how to somehow not sustain, maintain, continue systems of violence. And that whole thing, take up your cross, which is just oh, please. You always hear about this. That's not what, that doesn't mean you take up Jesus's cross and you beat yourself up. Okay? Your cross, and that doesn't mean you just like submit and get beaten up. That means like, okay, what's your own way of somehow trying to rectify this? It's like Judaism, tikkun olam, repairing the world. Okay? I'm leaving you to repair the world. I've exposed the horror of violence, political violence, any type of violence. Okay? The Gospel of Mark, the first, after he comes out of nowhere, he casts out a demon. Okay, it's a system in crisis. Okay, and it goes from this to this. And it's overwhelming. The world is effed up in the Gospel of Mark. Okay, and you get this one, but it ends badly because the world is effed up. But there's a way out. Guess what? The other Gospels, they change it. No, we got to do this. What Gerard got in trouble was he was trying to get a non-sacrificial reading of the Gospels. That got him into some trouble. Like, how do we do a non-sacrificial? And how do we rectify the Epistle of the Hebrews with that, which is a whole other can of worms? Okay. And he's like, so I'm not sure he did this in things since since the foundation of the world, and there's been some shift in that. But this idea, and this is where I think this is a theological nightmare, that every single mass, this person keeps getting sacrificed. I was like, come on. Have you seen iconography where you have God the Father holding up the crucifix? Or there's another one where God the Father is holding like the bleeding body. You get a lot of this iconography, especially in the late early modern period. I'm like, this is a nightmare. So in other words, this person is going to be continually to be brutally tortured.
Yeah. And
it's almost going against the whole idea that the way out, according to Gerardian, is we're ending sacrificial systems that need a scapegoat. If you keep doing this, and that's why I find the miracles of the Eucharist absolutely horrifying.
Me too. Yeah, I mean, I personally just find the whole idea that like, it's somehow like a good thing that God punished his son instead of us. Like, we deserve it, but he killed his son instead. Like that's not justice.
Okay, well, there's a good book, and I talked to this. It's Christus Victor, like different theories of the atonement. And I think the church is still stuck. This is not so much Anselm. It's called like punitive. I don't remember. It's kind of a variant of the Anselmian view of atonement, okay? Which is basically, we're being punished. He's taking on our punishment. Think of the Mel Gibson movie, okay? That was a perfect representation of that particular theory of atonement. According to Gustav Ullmann, the initial theory of atonement was, he did it for us. Not like he did it for. I think that they probably misread what was going on in Romans. There's this view of the wrath, understandable, but somehow it's for us, but also the initial view was kind of like the harrowing of hell. This happened, and then suddenly all these powers and principalities ended up getting destroyed. So that was the atonement, was coming in and kind of like saving from this type of course, then you get the whole ransom thing. Well, anyway, we're getting off the track, but the point is, it's like this whole, I just am having this issue with this whole, like, why does the mass have to be with this like constant sacrifice? Like, how can we make, well, what Gerard would say, you sacrifice for another person. That's the good type of mimesis, okay? In other words, that's up to you, which is very much a Jewish thing too. Like, if you're going, it's not like someone is taking on the punishment for you. It's like you make your own way of amending or atoning within the world. But I'm just like, if you keep with the sacrifice, then you end up with bleeding hosts and all kinds of other theological problems. It just seems to go against what I think is going on in the Gospel of Mark. And I talked to some of my friends who are Jews, like, where is the sacrifice in Judaism? It's very interesting that Christianity is very different than Judaism or Islam in terms of how it views sacrifice.
As in, like, Christianity, like,
yes,
sacrificing.
Are much closer in a lot, especially like the strict monotheism. But it's like, but where's Christian? And I'm not. The facile interpretation is because you have all these like dying, rising gods or something. I don't know, but where is this coming from? I mean, Judaism, you had obviously the sacrifices in the temple, but now it's not working in that type of sacrificials. I'm just saying these are all these issues that I have been wrestling with at the moment. There's something obviously I think, appealing to many people spiritually, emotionally. I mean, I totally get that. But it just, when it's, okay, like Mary, your Sacred Heart talk, oh dear God. That's like taking that to an extreme. Okay? So then you have somebody, well, you have to sacrifice yourself because I did all this for you. Okay, but that's Catholic guilt, which is different than Jewish guilt. But I'm just saying the nuns. Guess what? You're putting another nail. That's kind of what I was getting, offering oneself. That's different than God punishing. Yeah. That's kind of like for us. But we're not off the other thing is we're not off the hook, you know? That's the thing. It's like we're not off the hook. Who's Risto? Okay.
That's my friend. He just
Hi.
he wants to have a beer with you. So I don't remember, CJ, where do you live? I don't remember, but it's not Illinois, I'm pretty sure. But next time that you guys are in the same place, you guys should get a beer.
But so again, it's just I'm really not. I think I'm kind of a struggling theist at the moment, and there's a lot of always in the back of my head. Why is this happening to me? I'm being punished. It's like kind of always in the back of your head, you know. And I always have a visceral emotional reaction to Elgar's The Dream of Gerontius, which is just about as oh my God. It's like they were complaining about it's an oratorio. It's a text by John Henry Newman. It's like they were like this thing reeks of incense. It's got a purgatory. I mean, it's just, I'm thinking, why am I having this visceral emotional reaction to this? I think it's just going back to, you know, the way I was brought up, all the imagery. To this day, I cannot look at a crucifix or sleep in a room with a crucifix. It just, I cannot do it. And I went to see The Passion of the Christ with my Jewish partner. He said, we'll go. I know you want to go. I think we had post-traumatic stress disorder. We had to sleep with the lights on. Okay. And I was literally like wailing. It's like, what is I don't know.
I saw that movie when I was like 12 or something. Like, I don't think I...
Okay, you know what? That is child abuse. Okay? 12?
I was young. I was very young when I saw that movie.
Wait, hold on. 12?
So when did it come out? 2004? Oh, okay. I didn't see it when it came out because I was too young, but I would have been like 9 in 2004. So if I was 12, then I saw it in like 2007. Maybe I saw it in 2008 when I was 13 or something like that. But it was definitely before high school. Like, I was not 14 yet when I saw it. I was 12 or 13 or something, for sure.
I had a friend, she actually was going to see it. She castigated. She's like, that kid's 11. That kid does not need to be in the wall. He wants, one was like, no, that's about Jesus. It's good for him. It's like, this is not acceptable for children, you know? And let me tell you something else. This is this is the dirt on that movie. I don't know if people know about this. Most of that movie is not from the Gospels. It's from Anne Catherine Emmerich, The Dolorous Passion. That's where we got
the imagery from the Passion.
Most of the incidents in that movie are from Anne Catherine Emmerich, The Dolorous Passion of Jesus, from her supposed vision. That's where he got most of that from.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess the Gospels themselves don't include like a whole lot of the like detail, like flipping the cross on Jesus' face and he's floating and stuff.
The Gospels already knew what was going on. That they realized that's not the point, you know. But I was like, most of this has nothing to do. And the other thing is, like, if they were going to be speaking, they wouldn't be speaking Latin. They'd be speaking Koine. I mean, the point is then people saying, this is the way. No. Okay, I'll tell you this. This is so funny. It's so funny that we're having this because Friday, my friend Joyce, this lovely Jewish lady, and my friend Lynn, who's like, was Lutheran, and Joyce is like, I want to go to this like Shrine of Christ Passion in St. John, Indiana. I'm like, Joyce, why do you want to go here? But anyway, and then we could take Lynn out. And so Lynn's like, Joyce wants to go to the Stations of the Cross. I'm like, okay, this is our road trip. Then we met Joyce's friend Trent. So we had like a straight Jewish woman and another gay Jewish guy and 2 gay guys in a conservative Indiana to be gay. And I mean, Joyce was like, well, I could get the Veronicas. That's like the image of God and everything. So there was something, but I'm like, this is the weird. And the thing is, so I was filling them, and I said, there's no way that you could carry a cross of that size. They just did the cross beam, and it was so. The point is, Gibson was getting a lot of this iconography from Emmerich and also from some late medieval types of sources. Okay, but people thinking, oh, this is no, it's not. This is not the Gospels. When this came out, I was just like, you know what, this is, and this is going to go big. And I found out that people were like pirating it and showing it in evangelical churches. Why were evangelicals so into this movie?
Why was it? Well, I mean, I guess there's nothing wrong with it from an evangelical perspective, right? I mean, I know that they don't put Christ on the crucifix, but
but so much of it was Catholic, involving the Eucharist.
yeah.
I mean, some of it was like weary. A lot of it was like, for me, like, this is like super, super. My dad was like, I don't want to see this. This is like me growing up in Catholic school. Okay. He didn't want to see it. But I was just like, what is going on here with this movie? You know? And then he wants to do a sequel. Yeah.
So this point is something that I remember watching the movie for the first time and having that observation, and then my parents telling me, like, well, yeah, that's the whole point. Jesus suffered more than any human could actually bear, and he was able to bear it because he's God. But like, if anybody else went through the suffering,
theologically, I get that. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But it also is kind of like, okay, so you think, okay, so then he's fully human and fully, so it would make sense with that particular theology.
You know? Yeah, I don't know I don't know how my parents squared that one, because he is supposed to be fully human, so theoretically he should die the same as any other human. But
that's why I have problems with the Immaculate Conception. Let's have some problems with that too. You know, my issue with that was just these claims that this is how it was. It's like, no, it's not. It's almost like he was doing a pre-Vatican II or late medieval meditation on the mysteries of the Rosary.
Because that's what Mel Gibson was doing when he made the.
That's what I think he was doing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Mel Gibson is a trad, like me, like.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean,
there was some stations of the cross, but a lot of it was the mysteries of the Rosary. Okay, because you got, you know, which at this place in Indiana, you do this walk, and they have these different sculptures of the stations, and you press a button, and then it tells you, and then there's a meditation, and most of them are like, you did this.
Yeah.
This is your, you know, most of them were like that. It's like, you did this. And, you know, some of those, I'm going to say that some of those sculptures are kind of homoerotic. That's all I'm going to say.
Really?
Well, you got a Roman soldier in a kilt, muscles, a nice tush, holding a flogger. Okay, that's like something that could be in. I thought we were going to get kicked out because some people were like, you know, and I'm just like, this is okay. Come on. Well, they had they combined the mysteries of the Rosary with the stations. We didn't get to all of them because we wanted to go into a church, and Joyce was tired, you know. But I was just like, why are we doing? And their gift shop was a 12,000 square foot of every type of kitsch. Oh my God. They even had a permanent Christmas section. Now, the scary point about that gift shop, they had artwork which was Christian nationalist artwork. So pictures of Jesus with the founding fathers holding up the Constitution, like artwork like that. And I was like, this is really scary. That whole section of, and then what they had playing was both religious music and patriotic music. Okay. You know, definitely. Yeah. And I was just like, you know what, this is really scary.
The marriage like, of patriotism with Catholicism is disturbing to me.
Yeah, and they even had a it was in the to get to the walk, you have to go through the gift shop. So in other words, you're forced to buy something. I bought my mother a nice throw. Okay, they have Jesus praying for the aborted babies. Okay, I mean it's They do have Moses with the Ten Commandments. I thought that was nice. Of course,
Yeah.
it's not the order of in that, but I was like, we didn't get to see that. But I was just like, this is just the culture shock between there and here on the north side of Chicago in the second neighborhood was just like, oh my God. And that's scary. That is scary. It's like I'm talking about to have to move from one insular environment to another environment. It's like we're in this little blue bubble around here, and if you go out of it, you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, I used to
I don't know
live.
how it is in Kentucky. How is that in Kentucky? Because I thought Lexington was. I was in Lexington. That was kind of a college town. Actually, I went to a gay bar there a long time ago. I don't know if it's.
That's where
I
I
don't
live,
know if the rest of them.
Lexington.
Okay, it seemed like it's a little more, you know,
Lexington is
liberal.
one of two blue counties in the entire state. So the other one
That's
is
what I.
the other one is Louisville. So Louisville
That's
and
what I
Lexington.
thought.
Yep.
That's what I thought because I was staying with the friend. Her next door neighbors were les. I mean, it was because the university was there. It was fine. You know, there wasn't any. You know, but I was just wondering, like, but it seems like other than that, it's complete. Once you go across the border into Indiana, you're in a different. There's some spots in Indiana, but you're in a different world.
Yeah, yeah. And I actually used to live up in the Chicagoland area. I lived in Woodstock, Illinois, which was the
Okay,
last.
you're in a distant suburb. You are like way out. That's almost like rural.
That's why I said Chicagoland. But the people in Woodstock insisted that they were part of Chicagoland. Why? Because Woodstock is the last stop on the main line.
It
So,
is. It is.
so it's still part of
Actually,
Chicagoland because it's the last stop on the main line.
yeah, it's. I would say it's still kind of an exurb. I mean, Chicago keeps expanding. Is there anything else you wanted to ask me?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So
Okay, his brother Steve dressed in
so
what?
for Mike
Which
says
which
Mike
which
says I'm
which
late.
dress do you want to talk about?
I know, no, but look. So Mike says I'm late. And then he says, I'm watching from the beginning. My chats might not make any sense for a while as a result. His brother Steve dressed in what?
Which costume do you
High
want?
heels. This is
There
amazing.
were a bunch of them. No, that was he took one of my mother's like coats. He put a wig on and had some high heels and walked around. And he was trying to scare my brother. But I mean, he was always putting on like things on his head because he was always playing the women's parts and the stuff that we did. You know, he was always the ingenue. Okay, you know, always the damsel in distress. And he could always do like the sexy. Oh, well, one time, Father Stephen. Well, this is before. I think this is before he accused me of being a pagan. Okay, he's like, well, you know, Scott, I'm not sure if you're gay, but you have the gay sensibility. I'm like, define that. It's like, well, you like Joan Crawford. I'm like, I don't know if there's any straight men who like Joan Crawford, but like, come on. Are we going to get into the whole Joan Crawford, Judy Garland stereotype here? Of course, I'm old school with that. There's a lot of new divas there, but I'm like, you know what? What do you mean by the gay sensibility? Because if someone's got a gay sensibility, you certainly are more gay than I am. And now you've added the whole muscle gym thing. So what's going on here?
It's not
Well, I
helping
will say that.
the Lavender mafia. You've heard of you know that phrase? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Well, okay. Seminary stories. So when he was in the seminary, that seminary was Lavender. It's like, come on. He told me there was one guy who was all upset because the Christmas ornaments on the tree were not good enough. They needed to be from Marshall Fields. Okay, you know what? Aren't we just the queen of the Christmas tree?
Right.
Okay, and I'm I'm pretty sure that stuff was going on. I mean, come on. You know, I think actually two guys got kicked out because that is hearsay. They got kicked out because they were caught doing something. But
I wouldn't doubt it.
just
I've
just basic gay history. It's like you didn't have a lot of choices a long time ago if you were gay. Okay? You
yeah.
could either flee to a city and try and live that way. Or if you're a Catholic family, you would be given to the church.
Mm-hmm. I do a lot of conversations like the one that we're having right now that never make it to YouTube. People reach out to me all the time asking to talk, and be like, can it just be off the record? I say, yeah, absolutely. And I'll do a talk like the one that we just had, just entirely off the record. And I've spoken to more than one ex-seminarian who have echoed exactly what you said, that the seminaries are indeed like the proportion of seminarians who are gay versus the general public, it's not at all the same. And they've told me that, yeah, like one person I know was very close to becoming a priest, but was barred from becoming a priest like in his last year or something like that, because he didn't even do anything. He like went on like a coffee date with a guy or something, but somebody saw him in public. Something crazy like that. I might be like getting the details wrong, but like, yeah. And then he got barred from being a priest.
It's like, I don't want people to think of this being scurrilous, but priests on Grinder. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't. Okay, come on. It's like the new way of doing it. And this is just anecdotal, but I dated a guy who had an affair with a priest for years.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
Well, actually, okay, I'll throw this. I mean, I don't want this to be like gossip, but okay. You know that guy from Church Militant, Michael
Voris, of course.
Okay, there was the big scandal.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Voris and I had a little groping session in the basement of the Chicago. This was okay. I know it was him because I recognized his face. It was just a chance encounter. Because he used to go to the leather bar. Okay,
Wow.
And he said he was in town for a religious conference. I'm like, yeah. I said, well, no thanks. I'm not going to get. And then another guy down there too. It's like, well, I was like, yeah, he told me he was a priest. I'm like, no, absolutely not. My brother's in the seminary. I do not go there with this. Okay. I used to go to the Dignity, the Catholic Dignity, like they had the masses. And so after the masses, we go to the Lucky Horseshoe Lounge because they have strippers. Guess who was there with the strippers, like the priests and the brothers? Like Sunday night was the priests. And I mean, they were just putting however you want to interpret that, but that was known as priest night out, so they could get some good tips from the priests.
That's crazy. Jeez, yeah.
I'm just, and there were some brothers from the Franciscan place like St. Peter's. Some of them would say the masses at some of the ones there who were priests as well, because they usually had to get somebody from a religious order to say the mass because dignity was not authorized. That was changed, and so they had to have it at the Unitarian Church or whatever. But yeah, we'd all go to the Lucky Horseshoe and they'd be there but I mean, I'm sure it's innocent, harmful fun, but it's like, come on, I wish it's just, there just seems to be such an edifice of this is the way the teaching has got to be. It's all fits together very well. So it's always going to be this like scurrilous. It's really sad, And to be honest with you, it's like they're claiming that they don't want any gay applicants for seminaries. I heard that's the case.
Yep.
Good luck with that. And this is my take on this whole thing with gay men in the church. And I've said this on Twitter. They're going to have a really hard time if they start cracking down on this, because who's going to play the organ at the Mass? Who's going to be able to sing either Ave Maria, either one, the Bach-Gounod one or the Schubert, or be the music director? They're not going to get anybody. They're going to have a really hard time with their music.
Yeah.
And that is true.
I just think it's a really, really, I think it's very frustrating. And I don't mean to talk for, here I am talking for gay people, but the fact that the church is so insistent that, you know, gay people can't get married but also can't enter religious life. It's like, well, then what can they do? You have to be single.
What are you supposed to do?
Nothing.
My view of it, and this just applies to, straight people, straight. There is very little place in the church for single people. Okay? Whatever your orientation is, what do you do? There's nothing for you. Their focus is on, the heterosexual family, whatever,
Yep.
or having kids or something. It's like, what do? You could volunteer, but you're always going to be marginalized. And
Yep.
this is just not an orientation issue. Because in the past, if you were single and you could join, you end up being a monk or a priest or whatever. That was the option, which is not that much different than saying in some cultures that a shaman or something was sometimes of ambiguous sexual orientation, but had some kind of religious sacred power because they show a lack of distinction. So here you are. It's like you're almost like upping this whole lack of distinction thing, but at the same time you're afraid of that, so you don't want any gay people in the seminary. Well, good luck with that.
I agree, and I just think it's cruel, even apart from the logistical problems that it might cause. I think it's very cruel. But
the thing is, it's hard because there's a very much a lack of community generally since the pandemic. I've lost a lot. I've lost a lot of friends, just isolation, and I used to be a lot more involved in the community, but I've had some help, and it's just really hard to kind of make a go of it as a single person, even in the gay community. If you're not, well, my husband died before he could get. I've had two husbands, and they're both dead. We did not get married. Both died suddenly. One died suddenly after hip replacement operation. The other one died about a year after being pushed onto some train tracks in New York City. Okay,
I'm so sorry.
I'm thinking so I've loved two men, but it's at my age, the chances of getting into are almost nil. So I just have to use, social media as an outlet. And very much in Chicago, everything is couples or open relationships. That's one thing I'm very conservative about now is I am monogamous. But in the community, especially the community I'm in, the kink, they're very much an open. It's like no. I'm the
my 2 cents is that if that works for you guys have fun.
Exactly.
Not for me though.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. I'm like, you know what? Like, why can't I be I'm always those want me to be the side piece. It's like I have done that, and I hate to say this, I confessed it. I've gone through phases where I've been, and I went to St. Peter's and I requested a face to face, and we had a really nice, and I said, I've done this, and I think it was adultery because this person was married, and at one point, I was ending the relationship because it just wasn't, right for me, and so then my brother goes, "Were you absolved?" I said, "Yes, I was." Because I realized this is not, and people and I've had friends like, well, why would you think that's wrong? I said, because the guy was married to his wife. Okay. I don't do that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that going on. I could give you some. Go to the forest preserves on Sunday afternoon in the suburbs. There's guys in cars. They are married.
Not to each other?
No, they're married to women, and their wife is doing something on Sunday, or I'm going somewhere, and they sit in their cars in the suburbs, and they have sex with guys. And this is not an orientation, but I'm just saying it's not uncommon.
I believe it. I mean,
and there's certain spots. I mean, and at a lot of this is you still have guys in the closet who are married, blah blah blah. My late partner would be like, "Yeah, look, this spot, there's something going on." I'm just like, why are we doing? But I think it's again this culture of how do you live authentically? Okay, and this is just something. And what does that mean to be authentic? And one can say, well, the church has set up this own system, but you have to be in it to be authentic according to their particular hierarchies or boundaries. And you talk about the seamless web and everything. Or it's like, this does not reflect the messiness. Well, these ideals we could live up to, not necessarily, no, because they end up being harmful to what I consider the deepest part of your being, what Eckhart calls the castle of your soul, which is inorganic. Like, I'm not into this whole separation of soul and body. It's all together. It's all integrated.
Agreed. Yep.
And I'm like, you can't do that to somebody. Or someone said, this is going to sound, you know what? You can't idealize what makes you hard. Okay? You can't. All right? That's just, and trying to do these techniques or what, the stuff that courage does. I mean, I've heard it. Yeah, apparently my brother was also at some courage conference, by the way. I'm just like, oh my God. I know that's not conversion. I'm like, you know what? It was at Mundelein.
I'm pretty sure that courage is like diet conversion therapy, right? Because I've spoken to people who've gone to courage, and they've said that they essentially were told to pray the gay away.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I've heard different. They're claiming that they're not. They seem to take this like Freudian view to some extent, which is completely outmoded. But if someone wants to be celibate, fine. If that works for them, fine. But to be basically between the cliched rock and a hard place, like, come on, and then to say, well, that's part of the suffering of Christ on the cross. No, it's not. That is not parallel to that at all.
Not at all.
Okay?
And it's not like they're telling straight couples that they have to be celibate too, like it's
like the suffering of the cross is part of systemic issues of violence. So then you're asking people to do violence to themselves. Like, come on, man. Yeah, exactly. I like the comment. There is not a place. Single and childless people in the church are just not, they're not treated equitably at all.
Nope.
They're marginalized. There just isn't, there isn't a spot for them. Anyway, what time is it? Are we over? Or, I mean, I'm just
we've been going for just north of 2 hours. I was actually going to say this.
Okay, maybe does anyone have any questions? I don't know. I've been all over the place.
I think I was pretty much pulling up the questions as they came up. It's possible that one or two questions may have slipped through the cracks, but yeah, a lot of people were getting a really big kick out of your stories from your childhood about your brother, and multiple people were saying that they were very glad that you were sharing all of this, and that it's important for us to speak up about organizations that enable abuse, so that we bring it to light, because those same organizations are often pretty good at hiding the fact that they are enabling abuse.
Yeah. And of course, I love to talk theology too. I could get more into that. I mean, I just have a whole,
How about I have you back on for a pure theology discussion one time?
What I could do is I would just need some time. I have a syllabus, and I could kind of give a rundown of Renee Girard. I could give you a biblical. I mean, I got
that would be cool.
So I have pages I could share from this. I've kind of given you some hints of it, but I could certainly get into about the mimetic. I mean, I'd love to do that. That would be great, because I think people would find, because Roger Girard converted to Catholicism. Also, he's kind of been used by some of these Tolkien far-right guys, but I think in the wrong way. They're deconstructing him differently, but I'm just saying it anyway. So, all right, well, I got to go to bed. And
one final question. And Ray reminded me, thank you, Ray, for the reminder. But so I guess Ray asked, what was the church in Indiana? But then my final question for you is always, my audience wants to find more about you. Where can they find you? I'm
on Twitter as, okay, I do not, hold on. Let me just pull up my phone here. Okay, it's the Shrine of Christ Passion, but next to it is St. John the Evangelist Church, which is really nice. We were at both, but that's where the place is in St. John, Indiana. Let me
Perfect.
see. My Twitter handle
And then I'm not on
is
Twitter, but I can plug your Twitter in the description down
yeah,
below.
at Scott as my name, GR 60613. That is my Twitter.
Scott GR60613.
Yes.
Perfect.
And my handle is Dame Scott G. Dame. Fight
Perfect.
against ageism, hypocrisy. So I like to be called Dame because Benedictine choir nuns are called Dame. That's why I want to become a nun, because I could be Dame.
I like that. I like that.
All
Scott,
right. Well, this was fun. Yeah, if you want to have, I mean, I could certainly do a whole, I mean, Renee, and once I move, whatever, it's, I could certainly, I'll let you know what's going on with
perfect.
that. All right.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple weeks to get the move.
That's fine. I just gotta, I'm still looking for a place.
Absolutely,
and I'm not around here. It's just trying to find something that's okay is difficult. All right. So the question is so if I go to YouTube, is this going to be on here with comments or questions?
Yeah, you can watch the live stream. I pulled up most of the questions during the live stream, but if you want to watch the questions come in, and then also people are going to watch this after we're not live anymore, and they'll leave comments. If you want to respond to comments on YouTube, by all means.
All right, that's fine. I responded to some on your other ones, and I was did not agree with some of them. I was kind of never mind. Someone's getting upset with some of the Sacred Heart ones. I'm like, you know what?
People get upset with me all the time. I
want to watch your one on the Rosary, which I knew that one was fictitious, but I'm interested in hearing about that one.
You'll be interested in the second half in particular, because in the second half I pull from a priest who he's a relatively famous priest today. His name is Father Castello or something like that. But it's not Callahan, it's Castello, something like that. Anyway, he wrote a whole book about how he thinks that the story isn't a myth, it's real, and it's real, but Satan sent the Black Plague to Europe as to destroy all of the original source documentation. That's why there is no source documentation about this for the first 250 years. So yeah, you'll get a kick out of it. It's a good one.
Well, the other one I think this would be fun is I know you do the Marian apparitions, and that's something I've actually done some scholarship on. Ooh. But given my position, because I teach freshman comp, I have very little time to do any of my own scholarship, and so I'm fascinated with these off-the-wall, unapproved Marian apparitions. You should do Garabandal, Bayside, and Akita, and actually I would help you with these.
Okay, I would love that.
There's a guy actually, and he's a scholar. He's a medieval scholar, but he's also been doing a lot of research on QAnon Christian nationalism. I was going to work with him on the influence of Marian, especially Fatima, in this. But it's the almost you have the germ of the conspiracy theory mentality, which was marginalized, and now it's becoming mainstream. Yes. And you have these websites of these far right sedecabantist that are, it was Garabandal.
Yeah.
Which is Nikita. Well, that have been sedecabantist, but mostly they're into Garabandal or
Fatima, probably.
Some of these other ones which are pretty much have not been approved, or Medjugorje, obviously. That is the one that keeps coming up, which has not been approved. But anyway, all right. The cat has gone into the kitchen, which means that she wants something.
My cats are doing the same thing.
So Kevin, So Kevin, this was great, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm thrilled.
Thank you so much for coming on.
No, this is fine. This works out really well. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to log out, or I'm going to leave the meeting now. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Okay.
Thanks so much, Scott.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.